Hi, I'm Heather Morgan. I'm the CEO of Salesfolk, and I'm here talking today with Rand Fishkin, the founder of Moz. Hi, Rand.
Hi, Heather.
How's it going? Where are you now?
Very well. I'm in Seattle, actually, at home.
Oh, lovely. Well, hopefully the weather's good.
It could be
It's
better, but
okay.
not terrible.
Good, good. So, Rand, what originally inspired you to create Moz?
Moz is actually kind of an accidental startup. We, had been doing consulting for a long time from 2001 kind of through to 2007, and we built a few tools that our clients could access that we used to help do some of our consulting work. And in 2007, we kind of decided, hey, let's make them available to anyone who wants to buy them and see what happens. We weren't very sophisticated or very intentional, but when we launched those tools, a lot of people started subscribing. Some venture capitalists reached out and wanted to fund us, and the rest of it is history. So it was kind of an accidental inspiration to create.
That's a really cool and unusual story. I think as a consultant, you really understand your audience's pain points for your buyer personas. So you probably really, really deeply understood what they needed, and that's why the product was effective. Hopefully.
Maybe. I mean, I think we knew what we needed, and it turned out there were lots of other folks like us. I think
Okay.
that's more the case rather than we knew specifically what SEO professionals, consultants, in-house practitioners needed and wanted. And we've been working more and more towards that. I think we just got lucky in that. Turns out there were lots of us.
So how much of it was actually building a product for yourself to dog food versus building something that would save you time with clients? Or
I would
both?
say actually most of the initial tools were stuff that we built that could help us do client work.
Okay.
There was no idea that we would be selling this to other people, and so we hadn't really done customer development or market development or personas or anything like that. And in fact, I think that can still work well and still does work well on occasion for some startups, some founders.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if there were three things that every startup founder should know about SEO and content marketing, what do you think those three things would be?
Hmm. Only three, you say? Well, let's see. I would say that one of the big ones around both SEO and content marketing is both of them are very hard to measure and take a long time to show their value. And this is particularly true with some of the data like keyword not provided that Google has taken away.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's much harder to say, this is precisely how much value we derive from a particular piece of content. It's also very challenging because a buyer's journey tends to be long. It's often multi-device. It's often across multiple logins. And so tracking someone and saying, this piece of content is responsible for this sale is almost never entirely possible. And so therefore you have to be able to recognize small contributions of value from many different investments, and that makes it really tough. A second thing that I'd say is SEO is a very logical practice, but it's not a very straightforward one.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that if you think to yourself, hey, I'm intelligent, I understand how technology works, I know how the web works, I'm sure I can get SEO right. Don't fool yourself. There's a ton to learn and a ton that it will make sense after you know it, but is unintuitive until you start practicing or until you talk to people who've been deep in the field. And I think this is one of the reasons, unfortunately, a lot of startups, a lot of small businesses get themselves into huge amounts of trouble with SEO is because they have that arrogance of assuming, hey, I'm smart, I know tech, I know the web, I'm sure SEO can't be that hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that hard, it's just there's lots of twists in the logic and in the structure of how it operates. And then the third thing that I'd say about both those practices is they're designed to be built up as a flywheel. So if you go in with the idea of, hey, we're going to do a bunch of SEO work over the next quarter, and we're going to see a big return over the 3, 6, 9 months that follow, you're fooling yourself. You're crazy, right? You're gonna make big investments, hopefully over many quarters, and then you'll see those returns over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. A lot of small businesses, a lot of startups feel like, I don't have that kind of time. How do I bypass that? That gets them into trouble. And a very select few somehow do manage to get some combination of strategic and lucky and smart enough where they do it right, and then everybody thinks that they can imitate those few outliers. Also extremely dangerous to think that you're the 1 in a million who's going to, somehow beat the odds. So those are all big picture 3 things I would say.
It's kind of like, they're basically black swans, and people think that, okay, like, let's do that, let's go viral. It's the same kind of like mentality, and it's like, okay, well, even if that does work, doesn't mean it will work for you and that you can replicate that.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what's one of the best examples of one of those black swans, though?
I think one that a lot of people point to over and over again is Yelp.com, right?
Yeah.
So Yelp back in 2005, 2006 started, dominating search engine rankings, and everyone thought, oh, okay, I can do that. I can be a listing, review, value-added service, a site for every this kind of business. For Yelp, initially it was restaurants, right? But I can do that for all these kinds of small businesses or professionals or whatever it is. Listings of buildings, listings of commercial real estate, listings of different types of video drivers, what have you. And I think they miss a lot of the intense effort and energy and many of the years of slogging and slow growth that Yelp did have, right? Because remember that company started in 2001, and most of us didn't really hear much about it for the first 5 years of its existence. So I think that's a good example of one of those black swans or folks that I would not recommend directly imitating.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And so when it comes to you creating your own content for Moz, and especially like back in the day, what was that process like? I know some people, they try to start with a problem and then like go for the keywords for that problem and then create content around that, but everyone's different. So as a SEO expert and someone who's created a lot of great content, what is your process like?
I almost always start with a conversation or subject that I'm passionate about, and usually one where I've had in-person conversations with other people, and those conversations have felt, kind of that electricity or that passion. I think a lot of times people create content without discussing it with anyone else, and then they put it out there and it dies. And if you had actually had a chat about it, you kind of see that nobody's eyes lit up, and they wanted to move on to a new topic pretty quickly, and that's a good sign that that content probably isn't going to resonate. Once I have that topic in mind, I'll actually usually go and write up the piece along with some type of a title, and then sometimes I'll say, hey, I think this is a good match for some keyword targeting, and I'll go research some relevant keywords, find the ones that have some search volume that I think that I think this content would actually answer and be helpful to the searchers who queried it, and then I'll go edit those title elements and maybe some of the body copy. But I don't think that a whole lot of obsessive keyword targeting and keyword insertion is actually all that necessary these days. If you're on the subject matter of what your audience is searching for and you've got those keywords in your title and your headline, you're pretty good.
Yeah, I think the rules of Google's search algorithm is changing have also affected that a lot. Have you changed your process much over time, or has it always just kind of been like that?
I've always been sort of an outlier in that respect, in that my process kind of was that way all the way from 2003, 2004 when I started blogging. And that's not to say that I knew I was losing a little bit by not kind of hyper optimizing my pages, but I also felt that I was gaining more than I was losing because people would be more likely to become subscribers, read it, share it, link to it, because it wasn't spammy and stuffed with SEO keywords. And I think that's actually proven to be even more of a positive factor in the years since.
No, definitely. I'm the same way. I have a few friends who are really good at that, and they do it well in a non-spammy way, but I'm more of a writer first than a keyword hunter, and I do my keyword research, but it's still very much about like the content matter, which I'm most passionate about as well. So I can relate.
I think that's a very, very effective strategy these days.
So if you were a startup now, just starting out, what would you do to amplify your message? What's some advice that you can give founders that are maybe seed or Series A or even earlier than that about amplifying their message or their content? Just maybe along the same lines of what you were talking about before.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems is that before you actually create your content, you need to be thinking about who will help you amplify it and why. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have a great answer to that question, I wouldn't even bother making the content. I think the problem becomes because many people, content creators of all kinds, small businesses, startups, founders, whatever, create content and then say, okay, now help me promote it. And that's the totally wrong way to think about it. It's, why are you creating this? Who is it for? Who will help that message spread? Why will they help that message spread? What's their incentive to do so? If you don't have a great understanding of that and a great answer for that, then amplification becomes insanely hard. That being said, I would say one thing, which is you might want to check out a great recent presentation from Larry Kim over at WordStream called Content Remarketing. And this is essentially the practice of taking a piece of content that maybe hasn't performed to your standards or what you hoped, and using a lot of the paid amplification sources across social media, content ads through places like Outbrain and Taboola and Zemanta, using Facebook and Twitter and these social services to essentially pay to promote that content to a wider audience. And there's lots of very sophisticated and savvy ways that you can do that for a relatively low price still, because there aren't a lot of people investing in that platform. And so, prices to get those content ads out there is still really cheap. And that can help you reach the right audience, even if you haven't been able to attract the amplification you're hoping for.
And you said that's content remarketing, is what it was called? Content
remarketing,
and it's by Larry Kim? Was it?
Larry Kim from WordStream.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out, and I think our audience will enjoy checking that out as well. So, moving on, what are some of the biggest lessons that you learned as a CEO, as a founder of building Moz? Maybe even from some of your mistakes. And it doesn't have to be related to content. Maybe just strategies, sales, whatever.
I think one of the things that took me a long time to learn was to stop investing so heavily in my weaknesses and stop feeling so guilty about the things that I wasn't good at, and instead just focus on hiring great people who could be good at the things that I was not good at. I think that like in the Western world in particular, our education and upbringing kind of trains us to focus on our weaknesses, right? It's not, well, hey, you're getting an A in these 3 subjects. You really need to work on your writing skills or your math skills or your gym class or whatever. In the professional world, that's actually a terrible idea.
Yeah.
If you double down on your strengths, you can achieve remarkable things that no one else could do because that's what you're great at. And you can leverage those strengths to grow your business and earn the income you need to then go hire people who are great at these 10 things that you're not great at.
No, that's actually a really good point. As a former economist, that's called comparative advantage, and I always have like dorky economic jokes about that. But at the end of the day, you should really own what you're good at. Do the thing that no one can do better than you, and just focus on it and be even better at it. And that's what you can make your money from, and you can hire other people or trade services with other companies, with partnerships to do the rest.
Yeah, it's actually really fun to do things that you're good at.
Exactly.
Right? It's empowering. You feel better at the end of the day. You feel like, hey, I put my strengths to work. Here's the result of that. That's a great feeling, as opposed to like, man, I suck at these financial metrics and building all these Excel charts and pitching to investors. I not only suck at it, it drains energy from me. And so I come home at the end of the day tired, and I don't want to do the things I'm good at because I'm drained. That sucks. That's terrible. So
Yeah.
I like that a lot. The other thing, maybe big thing that I have learned is if you can have a great deal of self-awareness as a founder, I think that's a superpower. Self-awareness is very, very hard to get and very hard to apply, especially when you're young. I mean, certainly when I was young, it was very hard. And self-awareness isn't just knowing here's what I'm good at, or here's what I'm bad at, here's what I like to do, here's what I don't like to do. It's knowing why, right? It's understanding, well, because of these things that happened in the past, or because I am a deep believer in X, Y, and Z, I bias to this thing. And if you understand how you are and why you are that way, I think that can be really, really extraordinary. It can help you a lot too if you are transparent with your investors, your board, your co-founders, your team members around that self-awareness that you've got.
That's a great point. Have you heard of a company called 15Five before?
Sure. Yeah, we used them for a long time actually.
Oh, awesome.
I like them a lot.
Yeah, they're one of my clients. I'm actually going to a meeting at their office in about an hour, but that whole description...
You'll have to tell them I said hi and tell them I'm a big fan.
Yeah, when you were saying that, I was like, okay, if you haven't heard of it already, you should. It very much matches that. So,
yeah,
one last question for you, Rand. This is back to content marketing. Where do you think the future of content marketing is headed? I know there's a lot of debate and speculation around that, and I just would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think there's a few things to consider. One is there's going to be more and more companies adopting the practice, and that means the landscape is going to be much more competitive, and standing out will be increasingly difficult. I think there's also, because while there's many, many more companies investing in content marketing, there's not that same level of growth in consumer and business consumption of content. That's already kind of at the level it's going to be at, with one exception, and that is overseas and international. I think that's a huge area for growth, both of content marketing as a practice and as content and for content consumption. And so I think folks thinking about multiple languages, multiple platforms and devices, multiple geographies, multiple cultures, that's going to be really important for the future of this as well. And then I also see content marketing merging with, if not subsuming, all of these other practices around promotion of content. And that includes SEO, and that includes social media marketing, and it includes email, and it includes all of the formats of content like video and infographics and interactive content. And so I think this merging of worlds, which all of these things have always worked together very well, but I think there's going to be more savviness around those and more companies who are trying to merge those together. And the last trend I'd say around content marketing is I think we're going to see a future that is much more data informed. Content marketing today is extremely hard to measure and very hard to connect to ROI. And so a lot of the companies that are investing in it are doing so on the basis of belief rather than on hard data. And they're actually doing phenomenally well. I think that's a good belief to have. And you can track some of it or enough of it to often justify. But I think the companies that are doing really extraordinary things are those that are over-investing in what the data tells them to do. And so for those out there who can make that leap of faith, I think that's a competitive advantage.
And I'm curious, one thought I've been having is I feel like more and more content is going to move toward video, partly because people just don't read as much. And in the past, long-form content sometimes did really well, but I kind of feel like as attention span shrinks, that will become less and less effective, and you'll also move more away from written to video. What do you think about that?
I'm not sure. I think that is very dependent on your audience.
That's true.
And I think it's very dependent on the connection and what they're watching or reading for. I've seen long content, take a dive for a while, and I've seen it return over the last few years. There have been a lot of good studies showing that long content is now outperforming the shorter snippet pieces. I think video does have a long way to grow. I think it will continue to grow, but I think video unless it's done really well, kind of sucks.
Yeah, that's very true.
So, the accessibility of saying, hey, I can be a great writer, that's a much lower bar than, hey, I can create great video. Now, if you're willing to invest in and create great video, awesome. But, we invest in a ton of video at Moz, and it performs well, but not tremendously outsized to our written content. So
that's actually a relief.
I can go do that.
I much prefer writing to video, but this is a video interview because people all requested me to do video interviews, but personally I would rather write than do a video any day.
I hear ya.
Well, thank you so much, Rand. This has really been wonderful. I'm Heather Morgan with Salesfolk, and this has been Rand Fishkin from Moz.
Thanks so much.
This video has been brought to you by Salesfolk and Sales for Startups. Visit us at salesfolk.com